What is up, everybody? It's your girl Mimi back again with our part two grand finale of Wicked. We have finally come to the end of this journey. I am so excited to read this to you guys. I'm so excited. So, for any of you that are brand new, hi, my name is Mimi. I do book readings here on YouTube. If you're seeing this video, if you're seeing my face for the very first time, we have almost finished Wicked. So there are lots of videos for you to go back and watch and catch up on before you watch this video. But just as a real quick hi intro, I do book readings. I try to do once a week book readings. I was doing live readings. This is a recording. My schedule has been a little bit crazy lately. Summer's coming up and everything, so life is just lifing right now. But if you are at all familiar with The Wizard of Oz, like the original movie, if you are familiar with the the Broadway show, the musical based off of this book, if you're familiar with the movie based off of the Broadway show, which is based off of this book, and if you happen to have kids with you, little kids, this is not for them. Just as a disclaimer, the Wizard of Oz, the Broadway show, the movie, those are all kid-friendly media. This book, lots of adult themes in this book, not for little kids. So if you're seeing this and you're like, great, we love Wicked, this is great, I'll let my kids watch this nice lady read this great book to us. No, you won't. I do. Please don't do that. If the little ones are little, this is not for them. Teens and up, trust me. You'll thank me later. But with that out of the way, we're just going to dive right in and just finish because look, that's it. That's all we've got left. That's it. And then I'm probably gonna take a week off, maybe a little bit more, because I have another book that I've recently purchased that I want to get through reading that first before I get you guys introduced to it, because I'm on the fence about it. So I want to read that book and then get you introduced to it. So I might take a week or two off just to get the book read. And then we'll start with a brand new book. So without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 6. Shiz was a money factory now. The colleges, occupying an historic district, remained largely unchanged, but for some contemporary dormitories and flashy athletic buildings. Outside the university district, however, Shiz had thrived in the war-alert economy. A huge monument in brass and marble, the spirit of empire, dominated what was left of Railway Square, and the air and light around it was cut off by hulking industrial buildings, spewing black columns of filth into the air. The blue stone was now grindstone. The air itself seemed warm and earnest, the 10,000 exhalations of a city panting every second to increase its wealth. The trees were shriveled and gray, and not a single animal, capital A, was in sight. Crage Hall looked absurdly older and newer at once. The witch chose not to bother the porter and flew herself up over the wall into the kitchen garden, where once Bok had tumbled off an adjoining roof, almost into her lap. The back lawn beyond the orchard was gone, and in its place stood a stone structure, above whose gleaming pauxite doors was carved the Sir Chuffrey and Lady Glinda Conservatory of Music and the Theatrical Arts. 3 girls came hurrying down the path, chattering away, their books clutched close to their bosoms. They gave the witch a start, as if they were ghosts of Nessa Rose, Glinda, and herself. She had to hold onto her broomstick and steady herself. She had not taken in how far she had come, how much she had changed. "I need to see the head," she said, startling them. But one recovered her youthful aplomb and pointed the way. The head's office was still in Main Hall. "You'll find her in," they said. "She's always in at this hour of the morning, having tea by herself or with contributors." Security must be greatly relaxed if none of them questions my being in the kitchen garden, thought the witch. All the better. I may even escape unstopped. The head had a secretary now, a plump older gentleman with a goatee. She's not expecting you, he said. I'll see if she's free. He returned and said, Madam Head will see you now. Would you like to leave your broom in the umbrella stand? How kind. No thanks, said the witch, and walked through. The head rose from a leather armchair. She wasn't Madame Morrible any more. She was a small, pinky-white woman with copper-colored curls and an energetic manner. I didn't catch your name, she said politely. You're an old girl, but I'm a new one. She laughed at her own witticism, and the witch did not. And I'm afraid I haven't yet grasped the truth. Dozens of old girls come back every month to relive the pleasant moments of their growing up here. Please, may I have your name, and I'll call for some tea. With some effort, the witch said, I was called Miss Elphaba when I was here, more years ago than I realized could be possible. In fact, I won't take tea. I can't stay long. I was misinformed. I was hoping to see Madame Morrible. Do you know of her whereabouts? Well, is this good luck, or is it bad? Said the current head. Up till very recently, she has spent part of every semester in the Emerald City, consulting with His Highness himself on education policies through Loyal Oz. But she's recently returned to her retirement apartment in the Daughtery. I'm sorry, that's a joke of the girls, and it slipped out. It is called the Daughter Building, really, as it was financed by the generous daughters of Crage Hall, our alums. You see, her health has deteriorated, and, though I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, I fear she is very near the end. I'd love to pop in and say hello, said the witch. Play acting had never suited her, and it was only because the new head was so young, such a fool, such a girl herself, that the witch could get away with it. I was a great favorite of hers, you know. It would give her a wonderful surprise. I'll call Grammatic to take you there, said the head, but I should ask Madame Morrible's nurse if she's up for a visit. Don't call Grammatic. I can find my own way. I will chat with the nurse, and I will only stop in for a moment. And then I'll come back here before I leave, I promise, and perhaps I can see my way clear to making a contribution toward the annual fund, or some little endowment drive you must be mounting at present. To the best of her recollection, she had never lied before in her life. The Daughtery was a broad, round tower, like a squat silo, sitting adjacent to the chapel in which Dr. Dillamond had been eulogized. A scout, passing by with buckets and brooms, told the witch that Madame Morrible was one flight up, behind the door with the wizard's standard mounted on it. A minute later the witch stood looking at the wizard's standard, a balloon with a basket underneath it, commemorating his spectacular arrival in the Emerald City, and crossed swords below. From a few feet away it looked like a huge skull, and the basket a leering jaw, and the crossed swords a forbidding X. The doorknob turned under her tug, and she entered the apartments. There were several rooms, all cluttered with school memorabilia and tokens of esteem from various Emerald City institutions, including the palace of the Emperor. The witch passed through a sort of parlor, with a fire burning in it despite the warmth of the season, and a kitchen scullery area. To one side was a water closet, and the witch could hear the sound of someone sobbing inside, and the blowing of a nose. The witch pushed a dresser against the door, and continued on into a sleeping chamber. Madame Morrible was propped halfway up in a huge bed shaped like a phoenix. A carved gold phoenix neck had emerged from the headboard, and the sides of the bed simulated the bird's wings. Its feet joined at the footboard. The idea of its tail feathers had apparently defeated the ingenuity of the cabinet maker, for there weren't any. It was a bird, in an awkward position actually, as if being blown backward through the air by gunshot, or as if laboring in a human way to deliver itself of the great mound of flesh sitting on its stomach and reclining against its breast. On the floor was a pile of the financial papers, and an old-fashioned pair of spectacles was set on top of them, but the time for reading was past. Madame Morrible rested in a grey mound, her hands folded upon her belly, her eyes open and shallow, without motion. She was still like a mammoth carp, in all but the fishy smell. A candle had been so recently lit that the stink of the match's sulphur still lingered in the room. The witch pulled at her broom. From the other room came a pounding on the door of the water closet. "Did you think you would always be safe by hiding behind school children?" said the witch, beyond herself, beyond caring, and she raised her broom. But Madame Morrible made a sluggish, indifferent corpse. The witch struck Madame Morrible with the flat of the broom, on the side of the head and the face. It made no mark. Then the witch searched the mantelpiece for the testimonial trophy with the biggest marble base, and she bashed in Madame Morrible's skull with it, with a sound like a splitting of firewood. She left it in the old woman's arms. Its statement could be read by all, except the carved phoenix who would be looking at it upside down. "In appreciation of everything you have done," it said. Chapter 7. The witch had waited 15 years, but her timing was off by 5 minutes, so the temptation to go back and dismember Grommatic was intense, but the witch resisted. She didn't care if she was sentenced and executed for the battery of Madame Morrible's corpse, but she didn't want to be caught because of vengeance against a machine. She took a meal at a cafe and glanced at the tabloids. Then she wandered in the shopping district. Never one for frippery, she was intensely bored, but she wanted to hear them talking about the death of Madame Morrible. She was waiting for the reviews, as it were. And she would never come back to Shiz, she suspected, nor to any other city. This was her last chance to see loyal Oz in action. As the afternoon wore on, however, she began to worry. What if there was a cover-up? What if the current head, to avoid scandal, hushed up the news of the assault? Especially a crime against one so close to the Emperor. The witch began to fret that she would be denied the credit for her deed. She racked her brains for someone to confess to, someone who would be sure to rush to the authorities. What about Crope, or Shen-Shen, or Fanny, or for that matter, the Margrave of Ten Meadows, nasty Avaric? The townhouse of the Margrave was set out in the deer park at the edge of Shiz. It was late afternoon by the time she reached the Emperor's Green, as it was now called. Private residences were dotted about the expanse, each protected by its own security force. High walls lined with broken glass bottles. Fierce dogs. The witch had a way with dogs, and high walls didn't bother her. She welcomed herself over the wall onto a terrace, where a maid tending a phlox-flower bed had a conniption and resigned on the spot. The witch found Avaric in his study, signing some documents with a huge plumed pen, and sipping some honey-colored whiskey in a crystal glass. "I said that I won't come out for cocktails. You're on your own. Can't you listen?" he began. But then he saw who it was. "However did you get in here without being noticed?" he said. "I know you, don't I?" "Of course you do, Avaric. I'm the Green Girl of Crage Hall." "Oh, yes. What was your name?" "My name was Elphaba." He lit a lamp. The afternoon was darkening, or perhaps clouding over now, and they looked at each other. "Have a seat, then. I suppose if society forces itself in one's study's door, one has no further right to deny it. A drink? A wee one?" Alone of them all, he, who had been too handsome to believe, had grown better looking. He wore his hair swept back. It was rich and full, the color of polished nickel, and he clearly had the benefit of a life of exercise and rest, for his figure was strong and slim, his bearing erect, his color good. "Those born with advantages know how to capitalize on them," observed the witch, after her first sip. "To what do I owe this honor?" he said, seating himself across from her with a freshened drink in his own hands. "Or is it the whole world playing reprises today?" "What do you mean by that?" "I had a walk at noon," he said, "in the park with my bodyguards, as usual, and I came across a carnival entertainment set up there. It opens tomorrow, I think, and the park will be mobbed with clever students. household servants and factory workers, and with greasy, gabbling families from Little Glickus. There were the usual cast of children caught up in the allure of a good circus act, mostly teenage boys helping out, no doubt having run away from tiresome families in small provincial towns. But the guy in charge was a bloody little dwarf. "Bloody? How do you mean?" asked the witch. "I mean offensive. Pardon my slang. We've all seen dwarves before, that's not the point. It's just that I had seen this very dwarf before. I recognized him from years ago." "Fancy that." "Well, I wouldn't have thought anything more of it. But then you show up this afternoon from more or less the same zone of memory. Weren't you there yourself? Didn't you go with us to the philosophy club that night? We got so drunk, and they had that charmed sex thing, and that effeminate Tibbet got so wasted excuse me, and lost his mind and just about everything else when that tiger— You were there, surely." "I don't think I was." "Weren't you?" "Bach was, squiggly little Bach, and Fanny, and Fiero, I think, and some others. Don't you remember? There was that hag who called herself Yackle, and the dwarf, and they let us in, and they were so creepy. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's just— Not Yackle," said the witch. She stopped her drink. "This is insanity. My ears are having delusions. Everyone is right. I'm paranoid. No, Averick, I refuse to admit you could remember someone's name for 20 years like that. She was a balding gypsy woman with a wig, and sort of chestnut-colored eyes. In thick with this dwarf. I don't know what he was called. Why shouldn't I remember it? You didn't remember my name. You didn't scare me half as much. In fact, you never scared me." He laughed. "I was probably pretty nasty to you. I was an asshole back then. You still are. Well, practice makes perfect, and more than once I've been called a perfect asshole." "I came by to tell you that I killed Madame Morrible today," said the witch. She was so proud of the phrase. It seemed less false when she said aloud. Maybe it was true. "I killed her. I wanted someone who would be believed to know about it." "Oh, why ever did you do that?" "You know, the reasons just reassemble themselves in different patterns every time I think about it." She sat up a little straighter. "Because she deserved it. The avenging angel of justice is now green. A pretty good disguise, don't you think?" They both grinned. "So, about this Madame Morrible, whom you have claimed to have killed. Did you know that she gathered your friends and associates together and gave us a little lecture after you'd run away? You were never my friend. I was too near to be excused. I remember the situation. Nessa Rose was mortified and shattered by the whole thing. Madame Morrible took out your records and read to us a profile of your character as assessed by your various teachers. We were warned about your spikiness, your fringiness. What were the words they used? I can't remember that. They weren't memorable words. But we were told you might try to recruit us in some sort of juvenile attempt to galvanize some sort of student uprising. You were to be avoided at all costs. And Nessa Rose was mortified. Well, that figures, said the witch grimly. Glinda, too, said Averick. She went through another slide, like the one she went into after Doc Dilliman fell on his magnifying lens. Oh, please. Is that hoary old lie still in circulation? Oh, all right. Was brutally murdered by brigands unknown. Have it your way. Brigands in the form of Madame Morrible. That's what you mean me to suppose. So why really did you do it? Madame Morrible had a choice. No one was better placed than she to see that her students got an education and not a brainwashing. By hooking up with the Emerald City, she sold out all her students who believed that a liberal education meant learning to think for themselves. Besides, she was a vile fiend, and she did conspire to have Dr. Dilliman murdered, no matter what you say. But the witch stopped herself short. Hearing in her words about Madame Morrible, she had a choice, an echo of what the elephant priestess Nastoya had once said to her. No one controls your destiny. Even at the very worst, there is always a choice. Averick was rattling on, and you've had her murdered. 2 wrongs don't make a right, as we boys used to chant on the playground, usually when we were on the ground with someone's knee on our groin. Why don't you stay for a meal? We've got guests, a clever bunch. So you can call the police? No thanks. I won't call the police. You and I, we're above petulant justice like that. The witch believed him. All right, she said. Who are you married to, by the way? Did you get married to Fanny, or Shen Shen, or someone else? I can't remember. Whoever, said Averick, pouring another finger of whiskey. I can't keep small details in my mind. Never could. The Margreaves' pantry was fulsome, his cook a genius, and his wine cellar unparalleled. The guests tucked into snails and garlic, roast crest of fallow hen with cilantro and clementine chutney, and the witch allowed herself a sumptuous helping of lime tart with saffron cream. The crystal goblets were never empty. The conversation was exalted and loopy, and by the time the Margreavess led them to the comfortable chairs in the drawing-room, the plaster applique on the ceiling seemed to swirl like the cigarette smoke. Why, you're flushed, said Averick. You ought to have been tippler all along, Elphaba. I'm not sure red wine agrees with me, she said. You're in no condition to go anywhere. The maid will do up one of the corner rooms. It's lovely. There's a clear view to the pagoda on the island. I don't care for prepared views. Don't you want to wait for the morning papers to see if they got it right? If they got it at all? I'll ask you to send me one. No, I must go. I feel the need of some fresh air. Averick, madam, friends, it's been a surprise and I suppose a pleasure. But she felt grudging as she said it. A pleasure to some, said the Margreavess, who hadn't approved of the conversation. I think it improper to talk about evil all during a meal. It spoils the digestion. Oh, but come, said the witch. Is it only in youth that we can have the nerve to ask ourselves such serious questions? Well, I stick with my suggestion, said Averick. Evil isn't doing bad things. It's feeling bad about them afterward. There's no absolute value to behavior. First of all, institutional inertia, claimed the witch. But whatever is the great attraction of absolute power anyway? That's why I say it's merely an affliction of the psyche, like vanity or greed, said a copper magnate. And we all know vanity and greed can produce some pretty astounding results in human affairs. Not all of them reprehensible. It's an absence of good, that's all, said his paramour, an agony aunt for the shiz informer. The nature of the world is to be calm and enhance and support life, and evil is an absence of the inclination of matter to be at peace. Pig spittle, said Averick. Evil is an early or primitive stage of moral development. All children are fiends by nature. The criminals among us are only those who didn't progress. I think it's a presence, not an absence, said an artist. Evil's an incarnated character, an incubus or succubus. It's an other. It's not us. Not even me, said the witch, playing the part more vigorously than she expected. A self-confessed murderer? Oh, go on with you, said the artist. We all of us know ourselves in our best light. That's just normal vanity. Evil isn't a thing. It's not a person. It's an attribute like beauty. It's a power like wind. It's an infection. It's metaphysical, essentially, the corruptibility of creation. Blame it on the unnamed God, then. But did the unnamed God create evil intentionally, or was it just a mistake in creation? It's not of air and eternity, evil isn't. It's of earth. It's physical, a disjointedness between our bodies and our souls. Evil is inanely corporeal, humans causing one another pain, no more, no less. I like pain. if I'm wearing calfskin chaps and have my wrists tied behind me. No, you're all wrong. Our childhood religion had it right. Evil is moral at its heart, the selection of vice over virtue. You can pretend not to know, you can rationalize, but you know it in your conscience. Evil is an act, not an appetite. How many haven't wanted to slash the throat of some boor crossing the dining room table? Present company excepted, of course. Everyone has the appetite. If you give in to it, that act is evil. The appetite is normal. Oh no, evil is repressing that appetite. I never repress any appetite. I won't have this talk in my drawing room, said the Margravess, near tears. You've been behaving all night as if an old woman hadn't been slaughtered in her bedclothes. Didn't she have a mother too? Didn't she have a soul? Avaric yawned and said, You're so tender and naive. When it's not embarrassing, it's quite appealing. The witch stood up, sat down quickly, and stood up again, aided by her broom. Why did you do it? Asked the hostess with spirit. The witch shrugged. For fun? Maybe evil is an art form. But as she wobbled toward the door, she said, You know, you're all a pack of fools. You ought to have turned me in instead of entertaining me all evening. You entertained us, said Avaric broadly, gallantly. This'll end up being the dinner party of the season. Even if you've been lying all evening about killing this old schoolmarm, what a treat. The dinner guests drolly applauded her. The real thing about evil, said the witch at the doorway, isn't any of what you said. You figure out one side of it, the human side, say, and the eternal side goes into shadow, or vice versa. It's like the old saw. What does a dragon in its shell look like? Well, no one can ever tell, for as soon as you break the shell to see, the dragon is no longer in its shell. The real disaster of this inquiry is that it is the nature of evil to be secret. Chapter 8. The moon was up again, a little less swollen than the night before. The witch didn't trust herself to ride on the broom, so she meandered in a zigzaggy way across the greensward. She would find a place to nap outside of the claustrophobia of a society den. She came upon the construction that Avaric had talked about. It was an old, early TikTok thing, a sort of portable stupa made of carved wood and figurines, too variegated and numerous for the witch to comprehend tonight. Perhaps there was a running board where she could rest underneath, a platform elevated just a couple of inches off the dampish ground. She peered and moved forward. And where do you think you're going? A Munchkinlander, no, a dwarf, stood in her way. He had a cudgel in one hand and was thwacking it into the thick leathery palm of his other hand. Going to sleep when I can, she said. So you're the dwarf, and this is the thing Avaric talked about. The clock of the time dragon, he said, open for business tomorrow night, and not until. I'll be dead and gone by tomorrow night, she said. No, you won't, he answered. Well, gone anyway. She looked at it and straightened up, then something came back to her. I wonder how you knew Yackle, she said. Oh, Yackle, he said. Who doesn't know Yackle? Not such a surprise. Was she killed today, said the witch, by any chance? No chance, he answered. Who are you? She was afraid, suddenly, after all this headiness of sorrow and violence. Oh, the least significant little one, he said. Who do you work for? Who haven't I worked for, said the dwarf. The devil is a very big angel, but a very little man. But I have no name in this world, so don't bother with me. I'm drunk and disorderly, she said, and I cannot take any more riddles. I killed someone today. I can kill you too. You didn't kill her. She was already dead, said the dwarf calmly. And you can't kill me, for I'm immortal. But you try very hard at life, and so I will tell you this. I am the guardian of the book, and I was brought to this dreaded, forsaken land to watch over the book's history, to keep it from getting back to where it comes from. I am not good. I am not bad. But I am locked here, condemned to a deathless life to guard the book. I don't care what happens to you or anyone else, but I protect the book. That is my charge. The book? She was struggling to understand. She felt drunker the more she heard. What you call the Grimoire. It has other names. No matter. Then why don't you take it? Why don't you have it? I don't work like that. I am the silent partner. I work through events. I live on the sidelines. I dabble in causes and effects. I watch how the misbegotten creatures of this world live their lives. I interfere only to keep the book safe. To some extent, I can see what's coming, and to that extent, I meddle in the affairs of men and beasts. He jiggled like a little fiend. You see me here, you see me there. Having second sight is a great advantage in the security business. You work with Yakel. We sometimes have the same intentions, and we sometimes do not. Her interests seem to be different from mine. Who is she? What is her interest? Why do you hover at the edges of my life? In the world I come from, there are guardian angels, said the dwarf. But so far as I can work out, she is an opposite number, and her concern is you. Why do I deserve such a fiend? Why is my life so plagued? Who positioned her to influence my life? There are things I don't know, and things I do, said the dwarf. Who Yakel answers to, if anyone, if anything, is beyond my realm of knowledge or interest. But why you? You must know this. For you, the dwarf spoke in a bright, offhand tone, are neither this nor that, or shall I say, both this and that, both of Oz and of the other world. Your old Frex always was wrong. You were never a punishment for his crimes. You are a half-breed. You are a new breed. You are a grafted limb. You are a dangerous anomaly. Always you were drawn to the composite creatures, the broken and reassembled, for that is what you are. Can you be so dull that you have not figured this out? Show me something, she said. I do not know what you mean. Show me something the world hasn't shown me yet. For you, a pleasure. He disappeared, and there was the sound of mechanical parts being wound up, moving against one another, the grind of lubricated gears, the slap of leather belts, the chuck-chuck of pendulums swinging. A private audience with the time dragon itself. At the top, a beast prowled, flexing its wings in a dance of gestures, both bidding and welcome and holding at bay. The witch stared. A small area halfway up was illuminated. A 3-act play, came the voice of the dwarf from deep within. Act 1, the birth of holiness. Later she could not have said how she knew what it was, but what she saw, in an abbreviated pantomime, was the life of Saint Elphaba, the good woman, the mystic and recluse, who disappeared to pray behind a waterfall. The witch flinched to see the saint walk straight through the waterfall. A guttering spout overhead drained real water out into a hidden tray below. She waited for the tick-tock saint to come out, but she didn't come, and eventually the lights went out. Act 2, the birth of evil. Wait, the saint didn't emerge as the tales say they did, said the witch. I want my money's worth, or not at all, please. Act 2, the birth of evil. Lights came up on another little stage. There was a credible likeness of Colwyn Grounds painted on a cardboard backdrop beyond. A figurine, who was Melina, kissed her parents goodbye and went off with Frex, a handsome little puppet with a short black beard and a jaunty step. They stopped in a small hut, and Frex kissed her and continued on to preach. And through the rest of the scene he was off to one side, yammering away to some peasants who were busy screwing each other on the ground before him, hacking each other to pieces and eating their sexual parts, which ran with a real gravy, and you could smell the garlic and sautéed mushrooms. Melina, at home, yawned and waited, and teased her pretty hair. Along came a man whom the witch could not identify at first. He had a small black bag from which he had extracted a green glass bottle. He gave it to Melina to drink, and when she fell into his arms, either stupefied and drunk as the witch was tonight, or liberated. It wasn't clear. The traveler and Melina made love in the same bouncy rhythm as Frex's parishioners. Frex started to dance to the rhythm himself. Then, when the act of love was done, the traveler pulled himself off Melina. He snapped his fingers, and a balloon with a basket beneath descended from the fly space above. The traveler got in. It was the wizard. "Oh, nonsense," said the witch. "This is pure poppycock." The lights dimmed. The voice of the dwarf sounded from inside the contraption. "Act 3, he said. The marriage of the sacred and the wicked." She waited, but no area was illuminated. No puppet moved. "Well?" she said. "Well, what?" he answered. "Where's the end of the play?" He stuck his head out of a trapdoor and winked at her. "Who said the end was written yet?" he answered, and slammed the door shut. Another door opened, just by the witch's hand, and a tray slid out. Lying on it was an oval looking-glass, cracked along one side, scratched on its surfaces. It looked like the glass she had had since childhood, the one she used to imagine she could see the other land in, back when she believed in such a thing. The last she remembered of the oval glass was in her hideaway digs in the Emerald City. Inside the glass lived reflections of a young and beautiful Fiyero, and a young and impassioned Fae. The witch took the mirror and hid it in her apron, and wandered away. There was nothing in the papers in the morning about the death of Madame Morrible. The witch, with a treacherous headache, decided that she would wait no longer. Sorry, need to rearrange. Either Averick and his beastly companions would spread the rumors, or they wouldn't. There was nothing left to be done. "Just let word get to the wizard, though," said the witch to herself. "I would like to be a fly on the wall of his bunker when that happens. Let him think I killed her. Let that be how the news goes." Chapter 9. She returned to Munchkinland in a punishing journey, exhausting herself. She had slept so little, and her head still throbbed, but she was proud of herself. She had arrived in the front yard of Bock's cottage and called for the family to come. Bock was out in the field, and one of his children had to be dispatched to fetch him. When he came running, he had an adze in one hand. "I wasn't expecting you. It took me a minute," he said, panting. "You'd have run quicker if you'd left your blade behind," she noted. But he didn't drop it. "Elfie, why have you come back?" "To tell you what I've done," she said. "I thought you would like to know. I have killed Madame Morrible, and she can no longer harm anyone." But Bock did not look pleased. "You took against that old woman?" he said. "Surely she was beyond the point of hurting anyone now." "You've made the mistake that everyone makes," said the witch, cruelly disappointed. "Don't you know there is no such point? You had worked to protect the animals, A, said Bock, but you did not intend to sink to the level of those who brutalized them." "I have fought fire with fire," said the witch, "and I ought to have done it sooner. Bock, you've become an equivocating fool." "Children," said Bock, "run inside and find your mother." He was scared of her. "You're sitting on the fence," she said. "Here your precious Munchkinland is going to be sucked back into the folds of royal Oz, under His Highness the Emperor Wizard. And you see what Glinda is up to, and you send that child on her way with the shoes that belong to me. You took a stand when you were young, Bock. How can you have spoiled so?" "Elfie, said Bock. "Look at me. You are beside yourself. Have you been drinking? Dorothy is just a child. You may not retell this to make her into some sort of fiend." Milla, alerted to the tension in the front yard, came out and stood behind Bock. She carried a kitchen knife. Whispering noisily, the children watched from the window. "You do not need to defend yourselves with knives and adzes," said the witch coldly. "I had thought you would care to know about Madame Morrible." "You are shaking," said Bock. "Look, I will put down this thing. Clearly you are upset. Nessa's death has been hard on you, but you must get control of yourself, Elfie. Don't take against Dorothy. She is an innocent creature. She's all alone. I beg of you." "Oh, don't beg," said the witch. "I could not abide begging from you of all people." She ground her teeth and clenched her fists. "I will promise you nothing, Bock." And this time she got on her broom and flew away. Recklessly, she mounted the sides of air currents until the ground below had lost any detail sharp enough to cause her pain. She was beginning to feel too long away from Kiamo Ko. Lear was an idiot, headstrong and lily-livered by turns, and Nanny sometimes forgot where she was. The witch didn't want to think about yesterday, the death of Madame Morrible, the accusations made by the puppet play. She could hardly be more averse to the wizard than she already was. If there was a shred of possibility to that sick idea of his having fathered her, it only made her hate him more. She would ask Nanny about it when she got home. When she got home. She was 38, and just realizing what it felt like to have a sense of home. For that, Sarima, thank you, she thought. Maybe the definition of home is the place where you are never forgiven, so you may always belong there, bound by guilt. And maybe the cost of belonging is worth it. But she decided to head toward Kiamo Ko by following the yellow brick road. She would make one last try for the shoes. She had nothing left to lose. If the shoes fell into the hands of the wizard, he would use them to bolster his claim to Munchkinland. Maybe, if she tried, she could shrug her shoulders and leave Munchkinland to its own fate. But damn it, the shoes were hers. She finally found a peddler who had seen Dorothy. He stopped by the side of his wagon and rubbed the ears of his donkey as he discussed it with her. "She passed here a few hours ago," he said, chewing on a carrot and sharing it with the donkey. "No, she wasn't alone. She had a ragamuffin crew of friends with her. Bodyguards, I suspect." "Oh, the poor frightened thing," said the witch. "Who? Munchkinlander beefcake boys, I wonder?" "Not exactly," said the peddler. "There was a straw man, and a tin woodman, and a big cat who hid in the bushes when I passed. A leopard, maybe, or a cougar." "A man of straw?" said the witch. "She's awakening the figures of myth. She's charming them to life. This must be some attractive child. Did you notice her shoes?" "Yes, I wanted to buy them from her." Yes, did you?" "Not for sale. She seemed very attached to them. They were given to her by a good witch." "Pig spittle they were." "None of my affair either way," said the peddler. "Can I interest you in anything?" "An umbrella," said the witch. "I've come out without one, and it looks nasty." "I remember the good old days of the drought," said the peddler, fishing out a somewhat worn umbrella. "Ah, here's the bumbershoot. Yours for a nickel florin." "Mine for free," said the witch. "You wouldn't deny a poor old woman in need, would you, my friend?" "Not and live to tell about it, I see," he answered, and went on his way uncompensated. But as the wagon passed, the witch heard another voice. "Of course no one asks a beast of burden, but it's my opinion she's Ozma come out of the deep slumber, and marching on Oz to restore herself to the throne." "I hate royalists," said the peddler, and lashed out with a crop. "I hate animals with attitude." But the witch could not stop to intervene. So far she had been unable to save Noor. She had been incompetent at bargaining with the wizard. She had been a moment too late to murder Madame Morrible. Or had she been just in time? Either way, she should not try what was clearly beyond her. Had a fuzz on there. Chapter 10. The witch trembled on the lip of an updraft. She had brought the broom higher than ever before. She was in a state of exhilaration and panic. Should she pursue Dorothy? Should she snatch those shoes away? And what were her real motives? Was it to keep them out of the hands of the wizard, just as Glinda had wanted them out of the hands of power-hungry Munchkinlanders? Or was it to snatch back some small shred of Frex's attention, whether she had ever deserved it or not? Beneath the broom, clouds began to gauze the view of rock-freckled hills and patchwork meadows of melon and corn. Thin twists of vapor looked like the marks of erasure made by a schoolchild's rubber eraser, streaking whitely along streaking whitely along a watercolor sketch of a landscape. What if she should just keep on, urging the broom higher, yanking it up? Would it splinter as it beat itself against the heavens? She could give up these efforts. She could forsake Noor. She could release Lear. She could abandon Nanny. She could surrender Dorothy. She could give up the shoes. But a wind came up, a shoulder of hard air leaning onto her left side. She could not force the broom against it. She was driven sideways and down, until the yellow brick road once again etched a golden thread between forest and fields. There was a storm on the horizon, slotting bars of brownish rain between lavender-gray clouds and gray-green fields. She hadn't much time. Then she thought she caught sight of them below, and dove down to see. Were they stopping to rest beneath a black willow tree? If so, she could finish things up now. Chapter 11. By the time the storm lifted, and the witch awoke from what she now identified as a horrible hangover, she wasn't sure if it was the same day. She wasn't even sure she had gotten near them. Could she have let them slip through her fingers like that? But whatever the case, delusion or foggy memory, the witch didn't dare follow them into the Emerald City. Madame Morrible had many friends in this rotten regime, and the news would have gotten through by now. There might even be search parties out for the witch. So be it. Though it galled her, for the time being she had to give up on the idea of reclaiming Nessa's shoes. She scarcely rested during the entire trip back to Kiamoko, except to stop and pick some berries, and nibble some nuts and sweet roots, to keep up her strength. The castle had not been burned down. The wizard's reconnaissance army was still camped at its outpost near Red Windmill in a state of bored readiness. Nanny was busy crocheting a pretty casket cover for her own funeral and making guest lists. Most of the guests were already in the other land, presuming that for Nanny there was an other land. How nice it would be to see Amma Clutch again. I quite agree, shouted the witch, giving Nanny's shoulders a squeeze. I always liked her. She had more character than that simpering Glinda. You were devoted to Glinda, you were, said Nanny. Everyone knew it. Well, no more, said the witch. The traitor. You smell of blood. Go wash up, said Nanny. Is it your time? I never wash. You know that. Where's Lear? Who? Lear. Oh, around somewhere, she smiled. Look in the fish well. By now, an old family joke. What new nonsense is this? Said the witch, finding Lear in the music room. They were right all along, he said. Look what I finally caught after all these years. It was the golden carp that had long haunted the fish well. Oh, I admit that it was dead and it was brought up with the bucket. Not a hook or a net. But even so, do you think we'll ever be able to tell them we finally caught it? All these last months he had begun to talk about Sarima and the family as if they were ghosts, hiding just around the curve of the spiral staircase in the tower, suppressing giggles at this long, long game of hide and seek. We can certainly hope so, she said. She wondered, faintly, if it was immoral to raise children in the habit of hope. Was it not, in the end, all the harder for them to adjust to the reality of how the world worked? Everything else was all right while I was gone? Just fine, he said, but I'm glad you're back. She grunted and went to greet Chistery and the chattering kin. In her room she hung the old glass, with a cord and a nail, and kept from looking at it. She had the horrible feeling that she would see Dorothy, and she didn't want to see her again. The child reminded her of someone. It was that unquestioning directness, the gaze unblinkered by shame. She was as natural as a raccoon, or a fern, or a comet. The witch thought, is it Nor? Is it that Dorothy reminds me of how Nor was at this age? But back then the witch had not cared for Nor. Not really, even though her face had been a small velvet reworking of Fiero's. Except for Nessa Rose and Shell, the witch had never warmed to the glowing promise of children. She had always felt more alone in this regard than in her color. No. And now her glance did fall on the tired old-looking glass, despite her intentions. She thought, the witch with her mirror. Who do we ever see but ourselves? And that's the curse. Dorothy reminds me of myself at that age, whatever it is. The time in ovals. There is the green girl, shy, gawky, and humiliated. To avoid the pain of damp feet, splashing around in clammy leggings made of swamp calf hide and waterproof boots. Mama, pregnant with Shell, huge as a barge. Mama praying nonstop for months that she might at last bring a healthy child into the world. Mama dumping the bottles of liquor and the pinlobble leaves into the mud. Nanny tends to little Nessa, papoosing her around in the daily hunt for charfish, needleflowers, and broad bean vines. Nessa can see, but she cannot touch. What a curse for a child! No wonder she believes in things she couldn't see. Nothing is provable by touch. For his atonement, Papa takes the green girl with him on an expedition to the relatives of Turtleheart, a many-branched family living in a nest of huts and walkaways suspended in a grove of broad, rotting supple trees. The Quadlings, who are more comfortable on their haunches, duck their heads. The smell of raw fish in their homes, on their skin. They are frightened of the Unionist minister, finding them out in their squalid hamlet. I have no firm memory of individuals, but for one old matriarch, toothless and proud. The Quadlings come up, after a period of shyness, not to the minister, but to me, the green girl. She is no longer I. She is too long ago. She is only she, impenetrably mysterious and dense. She stands as Dorothy stood, some inborn courage making her spine straight, her eyes unblinking, her shoulders back, her hands at her sides, submissive to the stroke of the fingers on her face, unflinching in the cause of missionary work. Papa asks forgiveness for the death of Turtleheart, maybe some 5 years earlier. He says it was his fault. He and his wife had both fallen in love with the Quadling glassblower. What can I give you to make up for it, he says. Elphaba, the girl, thinks he is mad. She thinks they are not listening. They are mesmerized by her weirdness. Please forgive me, he says. The matriarch alone responds to these words. Maybe she is the only one who actually remembers Turtleheart. She has a look of someone caught venturing out from beneath a rock. Well, in a people whose moral code is so lax, so little is wrong. For her, this encounter is a mysterious, complicated transaction. She says something like, we don't shrive, and not for Turtleheart, no, and she strikes Papa on the face with a reed, cutting him with thin stripes. I was only a witness. I was not really alive then, but I saw. This was when Papa began to lose his way. It dates from this whipping. I see him shocked. It doesn't occur in his conception of moral life that some sins are unforgivable. He blanches, onion white behind the blood-pearled perforations of her attack. Maybe she has every right to do what she's done. But in Papa's life, she's become old Cumbricia. I see her, willful, proud. Her moral system doesn't allow for forgiveness, and she is just as incarcerated as he, but she doesn't know it. She grins, all gums and menace, and rests the reed on her collarbone, where its fletching tip falls like a necklace around her own neck. He points to me and says, "Not to me, but to them all. Isn't this punishment enough?" Elphaba the girl does not know how to see her father as a broken man. All she knows is that he passes his brokenness on to her. Daily his habits of loathing and self-loathing cripple her. Daily she loves him back because she knows no other way. I see myself there, the girl witness, wide-eyed as Dorothy, staring at a world too horrible to comprehend, believing, by dint of ignorance and innocence, that beneath this unbreakable contract of guilt and blame there is always an older contract that may bind and release in a more salutary way, a more ancient precedent of ransom, that we may not always be tormented by our shame. Neither Dorothy nor young Elphaba can speak of this, but the belief of it is in both our faces. The witch had taken the green glass bottle, whose label still read Miracle and placed it on her bedside table. She took a spoonful of the ancient elixir before sleeping, hoping for miracles, seeking some version of the fabulous alibi Dorothy was unwinding, that she had come from a country somehow other, not the real states across the desert, but a whole separate geophysical existence, even metaphysical. The wizard made such a claim for himself, and if the dwarf was right, the witch had this ancestry too. At night she tried to train herself to look on the periphery of her dreams, to note the details. It was a little like trying to see around the edges of a mirror, but, she found, more rewarding. But what did she get? Everything flickered, like a guttering candle, but more harshly, more stridently. People moved in short, jerky motions. They were colorless, they were vapid, they were drugged, they were manic. Buildings were high and cruel, winds were strong. The wizard stepped in and out of these pictures, a very humble-looking man in this context. In one window, in a shop from which the wizard was emerging rather dejectedly, she thought, she caught some words once, and willed herself with tremendous effort to wake up so she could write them down. But they didn't make any sense to her. No Irish need apply. Then one night she had a nightmare. Again the wizard began it. He walked over some hills of sand, with tall gray grasses blowing in a fierce gale, 1,000 grasses like the scratchy sedge with which the old quadling matriarch had struck Frex, and the wizard stopped along at a broad flat stretch. He stepped out of his clothes and looked at a timepiece in his hands, as if memorizing an historic instant. Then he walked forward, naked and broken. Then the witch realized what he was approaching. She tried to back out of the dream with a howl, but could not manage to disengage herself. This was the mythical ocean, and the wizard walked into water up to his knees, his thighs, his waist. He paused and shivered, and slopped water over the rest of himself as a kind of penance. Then he kept walking, and disappeared entirely into the sea, as Saint Elphaba of the waterfall had disappeared behind her watery veil. The sea rocked like an earthquake, vomiting against the sandy shore, pounding in a kettle-drum commotion. There was no other side to it. It threw the wizard back, again and again, though again and again he forged in, more and more exhausted. The stoicism, the determination. No wonder he had managed to overcome a nation. The dream ended with him washed back on shore one last time, weeping with frustration. She woke, gagging, terrified beyond telling, salt in her nostrils. Thereafter she avoided the miracle elixir. Instead, she concocted a potion derived both from Nanny's recipe book and the Grimory's marginalia on how to keep awake. If she fell asleep again, she would be prey to that vision of earthly destruction, and she would rather die. Nanny didn't have very much to say about nightmares. Your mother had them too, she remarked at last. She used to say she saw the unknown city of anger in her dreams. She was so enraged over how you turned out, you know. I mean, dear, physically. Don't look at me like that. A green girl isn't easy for any mother to explain away. That she gulped down those pills like candy when Nessa Rose was expected. If Nessa Rose were still around to take up a grudge, she could blame you, in a way, for what happened to her. But where did you get that green bottle? Said the witch into Nanny's good ear. Look at it, Nanny dear, and try to remember. I suspect I bought it at a jumble sale, she said. I could stretch a penny, believe me. You could stretch the truth even further, thought the witch. She suppressed a desire to smash the green glass. How deeply bound by cords of family anger we all are, thought the witch. None of us breaks free. Chapter 12. One afternoon a few weeks later, Lear came back from a ramble all hot and bothered. The witch hated to hear that he'd been hobnobbing again with the wizard's soldiers down in Red Windmill. They had news. A dispatch from the Emerald City, he said. A delegation of strangers got in to see the wizard. And just a girl. Dorothy, they said, a girl from the other land. And some friends. The wizard hasn't allowed an audience with his subjects in years. He works through ministers, they say. A lot of soldiers think he died long ago, and his absence is a palace plot to safeguard the peace. But Dorothy and her friends got in, and they saw him, and told everyone what it was like. Well, well, said the witch, imagine that. All of Oz, loyal and otherwise, is yapping about this Dorothy. What did the fools say next? The dispatch soldier said that the guests asked the wizard to grant them some wishes. The Scarecrow asked for a brain, Nick Chopper the Tin Woodman asked for a heart, and the Cowardly Lion asked for courage. And I suppose Dorothy asked for a shoehorn? Dorothy asked to be sent home. I hope she gets her wish. But Lear got coy. Oh, come on. I'm too old to be put off my supper by gossip, she snapped. Lear looked flushed and guilty with pleasure. The soldier said that the wizard had rejected the odd requests. And you're so very surprised? The wizard told Dorothy that he would grant them their wishes when they had... You haven't stuttered in years. Don't start again or I'll beat you. Dorothy and her friends have come here, have to come here and kill you, he finished. The soldier said it's because you murdered an old lady in Shiz, a famous old lady, and you're an assassin. Also, you're crazy, they said. I'm a more likely murderer than those incompetent vagabonds could be, she said. He was just trying to get rid of them. Probably he's instructed his own Gale Forcers to slit the girl's throat as soon as she's safely out of the limelight. And no doubt the wizard had confiscated the shoes. It galled her. But how flattered she felt that the news of her attack had gotten out. By now she was sure she had killed Madame Horrible. It only made sense that she had. But Lear shook his head. The funny thing, he said, is that Dorothy is called Dorothy Gale. And the soldiers at Red Windmill said the Gale Forcers wouldn't touch her. They're too superstitious. What do these soldiers know of intrigue, stationed here, out here at the edge of the moon? Lear shrugged. Aren't you impressed that the Wizard of Oz even knows who you are? Are you a murderer? Oh, Lear, you'll understand when you're older. Or anyway, not understanding will become second nature and it won't matter. I wouldn't harm you, if that's what you mean, but you sound so surprised that I should be known in the Emerald City. Just because you disobey me and treat me like trash, do you think the whole world does? Yet she was pleased. But you know, Lear, if there's even the slightest chance that there's any truth to these rumors, you had better stay away from Red Windmill for a while. Those soldiers might kidnap you and hold you for ransom until I give myself up to this schoolgirl and her needy companions." "I want to meet Dorothy," he said. "You're not that age already. Please preserve us," she said. "I always intended to pickle you before you got to puberty." "Well, I'm not getting kidnapped, so don't worry," he said. "Besides, I want to be here when they get here." "Worry is the last thing I'd do if you got kidnapped," she answered. "It'd be your own damn fault, and a great relief to me to have one less mouth to feed." "Oh, well, then who'd carry the firewood up all those stairs every winter?" "I'll hire that Nick Chopper fellow. His axe looks pretty sharp to me." "You've seen him?" Lear's mouth dropped open. "No, you haven't." "I have, as a matter of fact," she said. "Who says I don't travel in the best circles?" "What's she like?" he said, his face eager and bright. "You must have seen Dorothy, too. What's she like, Auntie Witch?" "Don't you auntie me. You know that makes me sick." He pestered without stopping until finally she had to screech at him. "She's a beautiful little dolt who believes everything everybody says to her, and if she gets here and you tell her you love her, she'll probably believe you. Now get out of here. I have work to do." He lingered at the door and said, "The lion wants courage, the Tin Man a heart, and the Scarecrow brains. Dorothy wants to go home. What do you want?" "A little peace and quiet." "No, really." She couldn't say forgiveness, not to Lear. She started to say a soldier, to make fun of his mooning affections over the guys in uniform. But realizing even as she said it that he would be hurt, she caught herself halfway, and in the end, what came out of her mouth surprised them both. She said, "A soul." He blinked at her. "And you?" she said in a quieter voice. "What do you want, Lear? If the wizard could give you anything." "A father," he answered. Chapter 13. She wondered, briefly, if she was going insane. That night she sat up in a chair and thought about what she had said. A person who doesn't believe in the unnamed God, or anything else, can't believe in a soul. If you could take the skewers of religion, those that riddle your frame, and make you aware every time you move, if you could withdraw the scimitars of religion from your mental and moral systems, could you even stand? Or do you need religion as, say, the hippos in the grasslands need the poisonous little parasites within them to help them digest fiber and pulp? The history of peoples who have shucked off religion isn't an especially persuasive argument for living without it. Is religion itself, that tired and ironic phrase, the necessary evil? The idea of religion worked for Nessa Rose. It worked for Frex. There may be no real city in the clouds, but dreaming of it can enliven the spirit. Perhaps in our age's generous attempt at unionism, allowing all devotional urges life and breath under the canopy of the unnamed God, perhaps we have sealed our own doom. Perhaps it's time to name the unnamed God, even feebly in our own wicked image, that we may at least survive under the illusion of an authority that could care for us. For whittle away from the unnamed God anything approximating character, and what have you got? A big, hollow wind. And wind may have gale force, but it may not have moral force. And a voice in a whirlwind is a carnival barker's trick. More appealing, she now saw for once, the old-timers' notions of paganism. Lurlina in her fairy chariot, hovering just out of sight in the clouds, ready to swoop down some millennium or other and remember who we are. The unnamed God, by virtue of its anonymity, can't ever be suspected of a surprise visit. And would we recognize the unnamed God if it knocked on our doors? Chapter 14. Sometimes she napped, against her will, her chin sagging on her chest, sometimes driving right down to the tabletop, jarring her teeth and rattling her jaw, and startling herself awake. She had taken to standing at the window, looking down in the valley. It would be weeks before Dorothy and her band arrived, if indeed they hadn't already been murdered and their corpses burned, just as Sarima's must have been. One night Lear came back from a visit to the barracks. He was teary and inarticulate, and she tried not to care about it, but was too curious to let it go. Finally, he told her, one of the soldiers had proposed to his fellows that when Dorothy and friends arrive, the friends be killed, and Dorothy be tied up for a little amusement along the lonely randy men. Wow, among the lonely randy men. Oh, men will have their fantasies, said the witch, but she was troubled. What had made Lear cry was that his friends had reported the soldier's remarks to their superior. The soldier had been stripped and castrated and nailed to the windmill. His body rotated in circles as the vultures came and tried to peck at his entrails. He still wasn't even dead. It isn't hard to find evil in this world, said the witch. Evil is always more easily imagined than good somehow. But she was struck at the vehemence of the commander's response against one of his own. So Dorothy might well still be alive, and was apparently under orders of protection from the highest military offices in the land. Lear held Chistry in his lap and sobbed onto his scalp. Chistry said, "Well, we'll wail while we'll wheel." He cried along with Lear. "Aren't they the sweet pair?" observed Nanny. "Wouldn't that make the sweetest painting?" Under cover of darkness, the witch slipped away on her broom and saw to it that the suffering soldier died at once. She thought one afternoon, inexplicably, of the baby lion cub taken from its mother and pressed into service in Dr. Nicodick's lab back in Shiz. She remembered how it had cowered. She remembered the fuss she had made about it. Or was she only glorifying herself in hindsight? If it was the same lion, grown up timid and unnatural, it should have no bone to pick with her. She had saved it when it was young. Hadn't she? They confused her, this band of Yellow Brick Road irregulars. The Tin Woodman was hollow, a tick-tock cipher, or an eviscerated human under a spell. The lion was a perversion of its own natural instincts. She could deal with tick-tock clockworks. She could handle animals. But it was the scarecrow she feared. Was it a spell? Was it a mask? Was there merely some clever dancer inside? All three of them were emasculated in some way or another, deluded under the spell of the girl's innocence. She could give the lion a history, and think of him as that abused cub in a Shiz science hall. She suspected that Nick Chopper was the victim of her own sister's spite and magic, casualty of the enchanted axe. But she had no way to place the scarecrow. She began to think that behind that painted cornmeal sack of a face, there was a face she would know, a face she had been waiting for. She lit a candle and said the words aloud, as if she really could do spells. The words blew aside the taper of grayish smoke that rose from the fatty tallow. If they had any other effect in the world than that, she didn't know it yet. Fiyero didn't die, she said. He was imprisoned, and he had escaped. He is coming home to Kelmoko. He is coming home to me. He is disguised as a scarecrow because he doesn't yet know what he will find. It would take brains to think up such a plan. She took an old tunic of Fiyero's. She called elderly Killjoy and bade him sniff it well, and sent him down into the valley every day, so that if the travelers showed up, Killjoy would be able to find them and lead them home rejoicing. And though she tried not to sleep, on occasion she could not help it. Her dreams brought Fiyero closer and closer to home. We'll see. Chapter 15. There was a day, in the first gust of autumn, that the banners and standards of the camp below were shifted, and bugles blew tinnily up the slopes to the castle. By this the witch guessed that the troop had arrived in Red Windmill, and were being given a royal welcome. "They've come so far. They won't wait now," she said. "Go, Killjoy. Go find them and show them the quickest way here." She loosed the senior dog, and so strong were his exhortations that the entire pack of his kin went racing along with him, howling with joy and frantic to do their duty. "Nanny," cried the witch, "put on a clean petticoat and change your apron. We'll have company by nightfall." But the dogs didn't come back, all afternoon and into the gloaming, and the witch could see why. With a telescopic eye in a cylindrical casting, invented by the witch along the lines of Dr. Dillamond's discovery about opposing lenses, she followed a shock of carnage. Dorothy and the lion trembled with the scarecrow beyond, while the Tin Woodman struck the heads of her beasts one after the other with his axe. Killyjoy and his wolfy relations lay scattered like dead soldiers on a field of retreat. The witch danced with rage and summoned Lear. "Your dog is dead. Look what they did," she cried. "Look and make sure that I didn't only imagine it." "Well, I didn't like that dog very much any more," said Lear. "He had a good long life anyway," he concurred tremblingly, and then trained the glass on the slope again. "You fool! That Dorothy is not for messing with," she cried, slapping the instrument out of his hand. "You're awfully on edge for someone about to have company," he said sullenly. "They're supposed to be coming to kill me, if you remember," she said, although she had forgotten that, as she had forgotten her desire for the shoes until she saw them again in the glass. The wizard had not demanded them of Dorothy. Why not? What fresh campaign of intrigue was this? She wheeled about the room, whipping pages of the Grimoire back and forth. She recited a spell, did it wrong, did it again, and then turned and tried to apply it to the crows. Though the original 3 crows had long since fallen stiffly from the top of the door frame, there were plenty of others in residence still, rather inbred and silly, but suggestible in a stupid, mob-like way. "Go," she said. "Look with your eyes more closely than I can. Pull the mask off the scarecrow, so we can know who he is. Get them for me. Peck out the eyes of Dorothy and the lion. And 3 of you, go on ahead to the old Princess Nastoya, out there in the 1,000-year grasslands, for the time is coming when we will be reunited, all of us. With the help of the Grimoire, the wizard may topple at last." "I never know what you're talking about any more," said Lear. "You can't blind them." "Oh, watch me," snarled the witch. The crows blew away in a black cloud and dropped like buckshot through the sky, down the jagged precipices, until they came to the travelers. "A pretty sunset, is there?" said Nanny, coming up to the witch's room in one of her rare forays, Chistery as always providing service. She sent the crows to blind guests coming to dinner." "What?" "She's blinding the guests coming for dinner." "Well, that's one way to avoid having to dust, I suppose." "Will you lunatics hush up?" The witch was twitching as if with a nervous disorder. Her elbows flapped, as if she were a crow herself. She gave out a long howl when she found them in the glass. What? Let me see," said Lear, grabbing the thing. He explained to Nanny, because the witch was almost beyond speech by now. "Well, I guess the scarecrow knows how to scare crows all right." "Why? What's he done?" "They're not coming back, that's all I'll say," said Lear, glancing at the witch. "It could still be him," she said at last, breathing heavily. "You might get your wish yet, Lear." "My wish?" He didn't remember asking for a father, and she didn't bother to remind him. Nothing had yet suggested to her that Scarecrow wasn't a man in disguise. She would not need forgiveness if Fiyero had not died. The light was failing, and the odd band of friends was making good time up the hill. They had come without an escort of soldiers, perhaps because the soldiers really believed that Kiamoko was run by a wicked witch. "Come on, bees," said the witch. "Work with me now. All together on this one, honeys. We need a little sting. We need a little zip. We want a little nasty. Can you give us a little jab? No, not us. Listen when I talk to you, you simpletons. The girl on the hill below. She's after your queen bee. And when you're through with your job, I'll go down and collect those shoes." "What's that old hag blathering about now?" said Nanny to Lear. The bees were alert to the pinch in the witch's voice, and they rose to swarm out the window. "You watch. I can't look," said the witch. "The moon is just like a pretty peach rising over the mountains," said Nanny with the telescope in her old cataracted eye. "Why don't we put in some peach trees instead of all those infernal apples in the back?" "The bees, Nanny. Lear, take that from her and tell me what happens." Lear gave a blow-by-blow recounting. "They're swooping down. They look like a genie or something, all flying in a big clump with a scraggly tail. The travelers see them coming. Yes, the Scarecrow is taking straw out of his chest and leggings and covering the Lion and Dorothy. And there's a little dog, too. So the bees can't get through the straw, and the Scarecrow is all in pieces on the ground." It couldn't be. The witch grabbed the eyepiece. "Lear, you are a filthy liar," she shouted. Her heart roared like a wind. But it was true. There was nothing but straw and air inside the Scarecrow's clothes. No hidden lover returning. No last hope of salvation. And the bees, having none left to attack but the Tin Woodman, flung themselves against him, and dropped in black heaps on the ground, like charred shadows, their stingers blunted on his fenders. "You've got to give our guests credit for ingenuity," said Lear. "Will you shut up before I tie your tongue in a knot?" said the witch. "I suppose I should start down and get some hors d'oeuvres going. They'll be peckish after these ordeals you're setting them," said Nanny. "Have you an opinion as to cheese and crackers, or fresh vegetables with pepper sauce?" "I say cheese," said Lear. "Elphaba, what's your opinion?" But she was too busy doing research in the Grimmery. "It's up to me, as always was the case," said Nanny. "I get to do all the work. I'm supposed to be teary with joy at my age. You'd think I'd rest my feet for once, but no. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride." "Always the godfather, never the god," said Lear. "Will you two please have mercy on me? Now go on, Nanny, if you're going." Nanny headed out the door as fast as her old limbs could take her. The witch said, "Chistery, let her go under her own steam. I need you here." "Sure, let me tumble to my death. Delighted to be of service," said Nanny. "It's going to be cheese for that." The witch explained to Chistery what she wanted. "This is foolish. It'll be dark before long, and they'll tumble over some cliff and die. The poor dears, I'd rather not. I mean the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow. They can tumble all they want, and might not be hurt much, I imagine. A good tinsmith could repair a battered torso. But bring me Dorothy, and the Lion. Dorothy has my shoes, and I have a rendezvous with the Lion. We're old friends. Can you do this?" Chistery squinted, nodded, shook his head, shrugged, spat. "Well, try. What good are you if you don't try?" she said. "Off with you, and your cronies with you." She turned to Lear. "There, are you satisfied? I haven't asked them to be killed. They're being escorted here as our guests. I'll get the shoes and let them go on their way. And then I'll walk this Grimmery into the mountains and live in a cave. You're old enough to take care of yourself. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Who needs forgiveness now? Well, they're coming to kill you," he said. "Yes, and aren't you just breathless with anticipation for that?" "I'll protect you," he said uneasily, and then added, "but not to the extent of harming Dorothy." "Oh, go set the table, and tell Nanny to forget the cheese and crackers, and go with the vegetables." She shook her broom at him. "Go, I tell you, when I tell you to go." When she was alone, she sank in a heap. Either phenomenal luck lay with these travelers, or they had courage, brains, and heart among them to do quite well. She was taking the wrong approach, clearly. She should welcome the child, explain the situation nicely, and get the damned shoes while she could. With the shoes, with the help of Princess Nastoya, maybe there would be vengeance against the wizard yet. Anyway, The grimoire would be hidden, one way or the other, and the shoes removed outside the wizard's reach. But the shock of the death of her familiars made her blood run cold inside her. She could feel her thoughts and intentions tumbling over and over one another, and she wasn't really sure what she would do when face to face with Dorothy. Chapter 16. Lear and Nanny stood on either side of the doorway, smiling when Chistery and his companions came down with an ill-judged whomp, dumping their passengers onto the cobbles of the inner courtyard. The lion moaned in pain and wept from vertigo. Dorothy sat up, clutching the small dog in her arms, and said, "And where might we be now?" "Welcome," said Nanny, genuflecting. "Hello," said Lear, twisting one foot around the other and falling over into a bucket of water. "You must be tired after your long trip," said Nanny. "Would you like to freshen up some before we have a little light meal? Nothing fancy, you know. We're way off the beaten track." "This is Kyamoko," said Lear, beet red and standing up again. "The stronghold of the Arjiki tribe." "This is still Winky territory?" said the girl anxiously. "What'd she say, the little poppins? Tell her to speak up," said Nanny. "It's called the Vinkus," said Lear. "Winky is a kind of insult." "Oh, goodness! I wouldn't want to offend anyone," she said. "Mercy, no." "Aren't you a pretty little girl? All your arms and legs in the right place. And such delicate, sensible, inoffensive skin," said Nanny, smiling. "I'm Lear," he said, "and I live here. This is my castle." "I'm Dorothy," she said, "and I'm very worried about my friends, the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow. Oh, please, can't somebody do something for them? It's dark and they'll be lost." "They can't be hurt. I'll go get them tomorrow in the daylight," said Lear. "Promise. I'd do anything. Really anything." "You're so sweet, just like everyone else here," said Dorothy. "Oh, Lion, are you all right? Was it terrible?" "If the unnamed god had wanted lions to fly, he'd have given them hot air balloons," said the lion. "I'm afraid I lost my lunch somewhere over the ravine." "Warm welcomes," Nanny chirped. "We've been expecting you. I've worn my fingers to the bone, making a little something. It's not much, but everything we have is yours. That's our motto here in the mountains. The traveler is always welcome. Now let's go find some hot water and soap at the pump, shall we? And then go in." "You're too kind, but I need to find the Wicked Witch of the West," Dorothy said. "I said the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm so sorry to trouble you. And it looks like a perfectly wonderful castle. Perhaps on the way back, if my travels take me this way." "Oh! Well, she lives here too," said Lear. "With me. Don't worry, she's here." Dorothy looked a little pale. "She is?" The witch appeared in the doorway. "She is indeed, and here she is," she said, and came down the steps at a clip, her skirts whirling, her broom hurrying to keep up. "Well, Chistery, you did good work. I'm glad to see all my efforts haven't been for naught. You, Dorothy Gale, the one whose house had the nerve to make a crash landing on my sister." "Well, it wasn't my house, in a legal sense, strictly speaking," said Dorothy. "And in fact, it hardly belonged much to Auntie Em and Uncle Henry, except for maybe a couple of windows and the chimney. I mean, the Mechanics' and Farmers' First State Bank of Wichita holds the mortgage, so they're responsible parties. I mean, if you need to be in touch with someone, they're the bank that cares," she explained. The witch felt suddenly oddly calm. "It's nothing to me, to who owns the house," she said. "The fact is that my sister was alive before you arrived, and now she's dead." "Oh, and I'm so very sorry about that," said Dorothy nervously. "Really I am. I'd have done anything to avoid it. I know how terrible I'd feel if a house fell on Auntie Em. Once a board on the porch roof fell on her. She had a big bump on her head and sang hymns all afternoon, but by evening she was her old cranky self. Dorothy tucked her little dog under her arm and went up and took the witch's hands in hers. "Really, I'm sorry," she insisted. "It's a terrible thing to lose someone. I lost my parents when I was small, and I remember." "Get off me," said the witch. "I hate false sentiment. It makes my skin crawl." But the girl held on, with a ragged sort of intensity, and said nothing, just waited. Let go, said the witch. "Were you close to your sister?" asked Dorothy. "That's not the point," she snapped. "Because I was very close to my mamma, and when she and Papa were lost at sea, I could hardly bear it." "Lost at sea? How do you mean?" said the witch, detaching herself from the clinging child. "They were on their way to visit my grandmamma in the old country, because she was dying, and a storm came up, and their ship went over and broke in half and sank to the bottom of the sea. And they drowned, every soul on board." "Oh, so they had souls," said the witch, her mind recoiling at the image of a ship in all that water. "And still do. That's all they have left, I suspect." "Please will you not cling so, and come in for something to eat?" "Come on, you too," said the girl to the lion, and it sulkily rolled on its big padded paws and followed along. "So now we turn into a restaurant," thought the witch darkly. "What? Shall I send a flying monkey down to Red Windmill to engage a violinist for mood music? What a most peculiar murderer she is turning out to be." The witch began to think about how she might disarm the girl. It was hard to tell what her weapons were, except for that sort of inane good sense and emotional honesty. During dinner, Dorothy began to cry. "What? She would have preferred the vegetables to the cheese?" said Nanny. But the girl would not answer. She set both her hands on the scrubbed oaken tabletop, and her shoulders shook with grief. Lear longed to get up and wrap his arms around her. The witch nodded grimly that he was to stay put. He whacked his milk mug hard on the table in annoyance. Excuse me. "It's all very nice," Dorothy said at last, sniffling. "But I'm so worried for Uncle Henry and Auntie Em. Uncle Henry frets so when I'm just a wee bit late from the schoolhouse, and Auntie Em, well, she can be so cross when she's upset." "All aunties are cross," said Lear. "Eat up, for who knows when another meal will come your way," said the witch. The girl tried to eat, but kept dissolving in tears. Eventually, Lear began to tear up too. The little dog, Toto, begged for scraps, which made the witch think of her own losses. Killyjoy, who had been with her 8 years, a fly-ridden corpse going stiff on the hill among all his progeny. She cared less about the bees and the crows, but Killyjoy was her special pet. "Well, this is some party," said Nanny. "I wonder if I should have prettied things up with a candle." "Kindle, candle can dull," said Chistery. Nanny lit a candle and sang "Happy Birthday to You" to make Dorothy feel better, but no one joined in. Then silence fell. Only Nanny kept eating, finishing the cheese, and starting on the candle. Lear was turning white and pink by turns, and Dorothy had begun to stare blankly at a knothole in the polished wood of the trestle table. The witch scratched her fingers with her knife and ran the blade along her forefinger softly, as if it were the feather of a phoenix. "What's going to happen to me?" said Dorothy, lapsing into a monotone. "I shouldn't have come here." "Nanny, Lear," said the witch, "take yourselves off to the kitchen. Bring the lion with you." "Is that old bag talking to me?" Nanny asked Lear. "Why is the little girl crying? Our food not good enough for her?" "I'm not leaving Dorothy's side," said the lion. "Don't I know you?" said the witch in a low, even voice. "You were the cub they did experiments with in the science lab at Shiz long ago. You were terrified then, and I spoke up for you. I'll save you again if you behave." "I don't want to be saved," said the lion petulantly. "I know the feeling," said the witch. but you can teach me something about animals in the wild, whether they revert, or how much. I take it you were raised in the wild. You can be of service. You can protect me when I go out of here with my grimoire, my book of magics, my Malleus Maleficarum, my memorizing in Incunabulum, my Codex of Scarabaei, Philfot, and Gamadian, my text, Thaumaturgical. The lion roared so suddenly they were all jolted in their seats, even Dorothy. Thunder at night, devil's delight, observed Nanny, glancing out the window. I better take in the laundry. I'm bigger than you, said the lion to the witch, and I'm not letting Dorothy alone with you. The witch swooped down and gathered the little dog in her arms. Chistery, go dump this thing in the fish well, she said. Chistery looked dubious, but scampered away with Toto under his arm like a yapping furry loaf of bread. Oh no, save him, someone, said Dorothy. The witch shot out her hand and pinned her to the table, but the lion had catapulted into the kitchen after the snow monkey and Toto. Lear, lock the kitchen door, shouted the witch. Bar it so they can't come back. No, no, cried Dorothy. I'll go with you, just don't hurt Toto. He's done nothing to you. She turned to Lear and said, Please don't let that monkey hurt my Toto. The lion is useless. Don't trust him to save my little dog. Do I take it we'll have pudding by the fire, said Nanny, looking up brightly. It's caramel custard. The witch took Dorothy's hand and began to lead her away. Lear suddenly leaped over and took hold of Dorothy's other hand. You old hag, let her alone, he shouted. Lear, really, you picked the most awkward times to develop character, said the witch wearily, quietly. Don't embarrass yourself and me with this charade of courage. I'll be all right. Just take care of Toto, said Dorothy. Oh, Lear, take care of Toto, no matter what. Please, he needs a home. Lear leaned over and kissed Dorothy, who fell against the wall in astonishment. Release me, mumbled the witch. Whatever my faults, I don't deserve this. Chapter 17. She pushed Dorothy ahead of her into the tower room and locked the door behind her. The long period of sleeplessness was making her head spin. What have you come for? She said to the girl. I know why you have trampled all the way from the Emerald City, but go on. Tell me to my face. Have you come to murder me, as the rumors say? Or do you carry a message from the wizard, maybe? Is he now willing to bargain the book for Noor? The magic for the child? Tell me, or... I know, he has instructed you to steal my book. Is it that? But the girl only backed away, looking left and right for an escape. There was no way out except the window, and that was a deadly fall. Tell me, said the witch. I am all alone in a strange land. Don't make me do this, said the girl. You came to kill me and then to steal the grimoire. I don't know what you're talking about. First, give me the shoes, said the witch. They're mine. Then we'll talk. I can't. They won't come off, said the girl. I think that Glinda put a spell on them. I've been trying to get them off for days. My socks are so sweaty. It's not to be believed. Give them to me, snarled the witch. If you go back to the wizard with them, you'll be playing right into his hands. No, look, they're stuck, shouted the girl. She kicked at one heel with the other toe. Look, see, I'm trying. They won't come off. Honest, promise, I tried to give them to the wizard when he demanded them, but they wouldn't come off. There's something the matter with them. They're too tight or something. Or maybe I'm growing. You have no right to those shoes, said the witch. She circled. The girl backed away, stumbling over furniture, knocking over the beehive, and stepping on the queen bee, who had emerged from the fragments. Everything I have, every little thing I have, dies when you come across it, said the witch. There's Lear down below, ready to throw me over for the sake of a single kiss. My beasts are dead, my sister is dead. You strew death in your path, and you're just a girl. You remind me of Nor. She thought the world was magic, and look what happened to her." "What? What happened?" said Dorothy, pitiably, playing for time. "She found out just how magic it was. She was kidnapped, and lives her miserable life as a political prisoner. But so have you kidnapped me, and I have asked for none of it. Nothing. You must have mercy." The witch came near and grabbed the girl by the wrist. "Why do you want to murder me?" she said. "Can you really believe the wizard will do as he says? He doesn't know what truth means, so he does not even know how he lies. And I did not kidnap you, you fool. You came here of your own accord, to murder me." "I didn't come to murder anyone," said the girl, shrinking back. "Are you the adept?" said the witch suddenly. "Aha! Are you the third adept? Is that it? Nessarose, Glinda, and you? Did Madame Morrible conscript you for service to the hidden power? You work in collusion. My sister's shoes, my friend's charm, and your innocent strength. Admit it. Admit you're the adept. Admit it." "I'm not adept. I'm adopted," said the girl. I'm sure not adept at anything. Can't you tell that?" "You're my soul come scavenging for me. I can feel it," said the witch. "I won't have it. I won't have it. I won't have a soul. With a soul there is everlastingness, and life has tortured me enough." The witch pulled Dorothy back to the corridor and stuck the end of her broom in a torch fire. Nanny was hobbling up the stairs, leaning on Chistery, who had some dishes of a pudding on a tray. "I locked the whole lot of them in the kitchen until they stopped their roughhousings," Nanny was muttering. "Such a hubbub! Such a racket! Such a wild rumpus! Nanny won't have it. Nanny is too old. They're all beasts." Below, in the dusty recesses of Kiamoko, the dog barked once or twice, the lion roared and pounded against the kitchen door, and Lear shrieked, "Dorothy, we're coming!" But the witch turned and shot out her foot, and toppled Nanny over. The old woman rolled and slid, oohing and wooing down the stairs, Chistery chasing after her in consternation. The kitchen door had burst its hinges, and the lion and Lear came tumbling out, falling over the heap of Nanny at the foot of the stairs. "Up, you, up!" shouted the witch. "I'll have done with you before you have done with me." Dorothy had wrenched herself free and dashed up the corkscrew stairs of the tower ahead of the witch. There was only one exit, and that was to the parapet. The witch followed in good speed, needing to finish the deed before the lion and Lear arrived. She would get the shoes, she would take the grimory, she would abandon Lear and Nor, and disappear into the wilderness. She would burn the book and the shoes, and then she would bury herself. Dorothy was a dark shape, huddled over, retching on the stones. "You haven't answered my question," said the witch, poking the torch up high, releasing specters and ghosts among the shadows of the castellations. "You've come hunting me down, and I want to know. Why will you murder me?" The witch slammed the door behind her and locked it. All the better. The girl could only gasp. "You think they're not telling stories about you all over Oz? You think I don't know the wizard sent you here to bring back proof that I was dead?" "Oh, that," said Dorothy, "that is true. But that's not why I came." "You can't possibly be a competent liar. Not with that face." The witch held the broom up at an angle. "Tell me the truth, and when you've finished, then I'll kill you. For in times like these, my little one, you must kill before you are killed." "I couldn't kill you," said the girl, weeping. "I was horror-struck to have killed your sister. How can I kill you, too?" "Very charming," said the witch. "Very nice, very touching. Then why did you come here?" "Yes, the wizard said to murder you," Dorothy said, "but I never intended to, and that's not why I came." The witch held the burning broom even higher, closer, to look in the girl's face. When they said that it was your sister, and that we had to come here, it was like a prison sentence, and I never wanted to. But I thought, well, I would come, and my friends would come with me to help, and I would come and I would say, Say what? Cried the witch on the edge. I would say, the girl, said the girl, straightening up, gritting her teeth. I would say to you, would you ever forgive me for that accident, for the death of your sister? Would you ever forgive me? For I could never forgive myself. The witch shrieked in panic, in disbelief, that even now the world should twist so, offending her once again. Elphaba, who had endured Sarema's refusal to forgive, now begged by a gibbering child for the same mercy always denied her. How could you give such a thing out of your own hollowness? She was caught, twisting, trying, full of will. But toward what? A fragment of the brush of the broom fluttered off and lit on her skirt, and then there was a run of flames in her lap, eating up the driest tinder in the Vincus. Oh, will this nightmare never end? Screamed Dorothy. And she grabbed at a bucket for collecting rainwater that, in the sudden flare-up of light, had come into view. She said, I will save you! And she hurled the water at the witch. An instant sharp of pain before the numbness. The world was floods above and fire below. If there was such a thing as a soul, the soul had gambled on a sort of baptism, and had it won? The body apologizes to the soul for its errors, and the soul asks forgiveness for squatting in the body without invitation. A ring of expectant faces before the light dims. They move in the shadow like ghouls. There is Mamma, playing with her hair. There is Nessa Rose, stern and bleached as weathered timber. There is Papa, lost in his reflections, looking for himself in the faces of the suspicious heathen. There is Shell, not quite yet himself, despite his apparent wholeness. They become others. They become Nanny in her prime, Tart and Officious, and Amma Clutch, and Amma Vimp, and the other Ammas, lumped together now in a maternal blur. They become Bok, sweet and lithe and earnest, as yet unbowed, and Crope and Tibbet in their funny, campy anxiety to be liked, and Averick in his superiority, and Glinda in her gowns waiting to be good enough to deserve what she gets. And the ones whose stories are over, Manette and Madame Morrible and Dr. Dillamond, and most of all Fiyero, whose blue diamonds are the blues of water and of sulphurous fire both, and the ones whose stories are curiously unfinished. Was it to be like this? The Princess Nestoria of the Scrow, whose help could not arrive in time, and Lear, the mysterious foundling boy, pushing out of his pea-pod, Sarema, who in her loving welcome and sisterliness would not forgive, and Sarema's sisters and children and future and past, and the ones who fell to the wizard, including Killjoy and the other resident creatures, and behind them the wizard himself, a failure until he exiled himself from his own land, and behind him Yackle, whoever she was, if anyone, and the anonymous adepts, if they existed, and the dwarf, who had no name to share, and the creatures of makeshift lives, the hobbled together, the disenfranchised and the abused, the lion, the scarecrow, the maimed tin woodman, up from the shadows for an instant, up into the light, then back. The goddess of gifts the last, reaching in among flames and water, cradling her, crooning something, but the words remain unclear. Chapter 18. Oz stretched out from Kalmoko a good several hundred miles to the west and north, and even farther to the east and south. On the night the Wicked Witch of the West died, anyone with the eyes to see so well could have looked out from the parapet. Westward, the moon was rising over the 1,000-year grasslands. Through the peaceful Unamata refused to join them. The Arjiki clans in the Scrow were meeting to consider a pact of alliance, given the wizard's armies massing up in Cumbricia's pass. The Arjiki chieftain and the Princess Nestoria agreed to send a delegation to the Witch of the West and ask for guidance and support. As they toasted her and wished her well, not an hour after her death, the messenger crows Elphaba had dispatched for help were swooped upon by nocturnal rocks and devoured. The moon ran silver up and down the sides of the great kells, and silver shadows settled in the valleys of the lesser kells. The scorpions of the sour sands came out to sting. The skark and the thirsk desert mated in their nest. At the Gavan altar, practitioners of a secret so obscure that it had no name made their nightly oblations for the souls of the dead, assuming, as most do, that the dead had had souls. The Quadling country, a wasteland of mud and frogs, rotted quietly all night, except for an incident in Corrier. A crocodile entered a nursery and chewed up a small baby. The animal was destroyed, and both corpses were burned, with loud wailing and anger. In Gillikin, the banks turned over their money to keep it fresh and vibrant. The factories turned over their wares. The merchants turned over their wives. The students in Shiz turned over intellectual propositions, and the Tick-Tock labor force met secretly, in what had used to be the Philosophy Club, to hear the freed and grieving Grammatic talk class revolution. Lady Glinda had a bad night, a night of shakes and regret and pain. She guessed it was the early signs of gout from her rich diet. But she sat up half the night and lit a candle in a window, for reasons she couldn't articulate. The moon passed overhead in its path from the Vincus, and she felt its accusatory spotlight and moved back from the tall windows. Across the low ridge of hills known as the Madeleines, into the corn basket, looking into the windows of Colwyn grounds, the moon continued its journey. Frex was asleep, dreaming of Turtle Heart, and yes, of Melina, his beautiful Melina, making him breakfast on the day he went in to preach against the evil clock. Melina was a froth of beauty, huge as a world, spinning him courage, daring, love. Frex hardly stirred when Shell tiptoed in, back from some clandestine rendezvous, and came to sit by the side of his bed. Shell wasn't sure he noticed. He wasn't sure his father really woke up. What I never could understand was the teeth, mumbled Frex. Why the teeth? Who knows why, said Shell fondly, not understanding the dreamy murmur. The moon on the Emerald City? It couldn't be seen. Lights too bright, energy too high, spirits too wired. No one looked for it. In a room, surprisingly bare and simple for one so powerful and elevated, the sleepless Wizard of Oz wiped his brow and wondered how long his luck would hold out. He had been wondering the same thing for 40 years, and he had hoped that luck would begin to seem habitual, deserved. But he could hear the very mice chewing away at the foundations of his palace. The arrival of that Dorothy Gale from Kansas was a summons. He knew it. He knew it when he saw her face. There was no point in searching after the Grimmery any longer. His avenging angel had come to call him home. A suicide was waiting for him back in his own world, and by now he ought to have learned enough to get through it successfully. He had sent Dorothy, locked in those shoes as she was, to kill the witch. He had sent a girl in to do a man's job. If the witch was the victor, well, that was the troublesome girl out of the way then. Perversely, though, in a fatherly way, he had half hoped Dorothy would get through her trials all right. It became a celebrated event, the death of the Wicked Witch of the West. It was hailed as political assassination or a juicy murder. Dorothy's description of what had happened was deemed self-delusion, at best, or a bald-faced lie. Murder or mercy-killing or accident. In an indirect way it helped rid the country of its dictator. Dorothy, more stunned than ever, made her way back to the Emerald City with the Lion, the Tin Woodman, the Scarecrow, and Lear. There, Dorothy had her second famous audience with the wizard. Perhaps he again tried to pry the slippers off her for his own purposes, and perhaps Dorothy outwitted him, spurred by the witch's warnings. At any rate, she presented him with something from the witch's house to prove that she had been there. The broom had been burnt beyond recognition, and the grimoire had seemed too cumbersome to carry, so she brought the green glass bottle that said Miracle Elit on the paper glued to the front. It may merely be apocryphal that when the wizard saw the glass bottle he gasped and clutched his heart. The story is told in so many ways, depending on who is doing the telling, that what needs to be heard at the time. It is a matter of history, however, that shortly thereafter the wizard absconded from the palace. He left in the way he had first arrived, a hot air balloon, just a few hours before seditious ministers were led to a palace revolt to hold an execution without trial. A lot of nonsense has been circulated about how Dorothy left Oz. There was some who say she never did. They say, as they said of Ozma before her, that she is in hiding, in disguise, patient as a maiden, waiting to come back and show herself again. Others insist she flew up into the sky like a saint, ascending to the other land, waving her apron giddily and clutching that damn fool dog. Lear disappeared into the sea of humanity in the Emerald City, to hunt for his half-sister Noor. He was not heard from again for some time. Whatever may have happened to the original shoes, everyone remembered them as beautiful, even stunning. Well-fashioned, name-brand imitations were always available and never went out of style for very long. The shoes, or their replicas, with their suggestion of residual magic, cropped up at so many public ceremonies that, like the relics of saints, they began to multiply to fill the need. And of the witch? In the life of a witch, there is no after. In the ever after of a witch, there is no happily. In the story of a witch, there is no afterward. Of that part that is beyond the life story, beyond the story of life, there is, alas, or perhaps, thank mercy, no telling. She was dead and gone, and all that was left of her was the carapace of her reputation for malice. And there the wicked old witch stayed for a good long time. And did she ever come out? Not yet. The end. Thank you all so very much for being on this journey with me. It has been absolutely wonderful reading this book to you. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope you guys are excited about the next book I have for you guys. I don't want to give the title away right now, because again, I haven't read it. I want to read the book. I want to get familiar with it and start with something fresh, something new. So with that, I will bid you all a good day. Please keep yourself safe, stay hydrated, and I will see you next time. Bye.